Hey there, I'm Apple Creator with Investing Simple. In this video, we're providing you with an in-depth look at how to transfer your assets from Robinhood over to M1 Finance. So as a beginner investor, there's a ton of pressure to pick the right investing app for you. And if you have never invested before or you're just getting started, it can be pretty tough to know what's the best option for you. So if you've been on Robinhood for a while and you're like, hey, I don't think this is the place for me anymore, and M1 Finance is, there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. Whether you want to take a less active approach in your investments, you want to take advantage of the expert pies. There's a ton of advantages that M1 Finance does offer. And if you want a full comparison between these two apps just to make sure that you're actually making the right choice, we have a full comparison up here that you can check out just to make sure that this is something you actually want to go through with and you know the full ins and outs of both platforms. Now, when it comes to the transfer process itself, there is a 3-step process that you're going to have to go through in order to get your assets from Robinhood to M1 Finance. Let's get into that right now. So the first step is actually transferring your assets out of Robinhood. The second step is opening up an M1 Finance account. And the third step is transferring those assets into M1 Finance. So starting off with number 1 in transferring your assets out of Robinhood, the first thing you got to do is determine which stocks and ETFs you want to actually transfer from the Robinhood platform over to M1 Finance. And I say stocks and ETFs because you cannot transfer options contracts, nor can you transfer cryptocurrencies from Robinhood. Even though those assets are offered on Robinhood, they're not currently offered on M1 Finance, so you're only going to be able to transfer your stocks and your ETFs. In addition, there may be some particular stocks and ETFs that are not offered on M1 Finance, so you're going to want to just search them up really quickly on M1 Finance's website before you actually go about facilitating the transfer. Because what's going to happen if you try to transfer assets from Robinhood to M1 Finance that M1 Finance doesn't offer, they're going to be sold and then the cash is just going to be sitting in your M1 Finance account. You can reinvest it, but you might not have wanted to sell those assets. And if you do sell them, then there might be tax consequences associated with that as well that you're going to have to keep in mind. Now, actually, the same thing is going to go for fractional shares. So if you try to transfer any fractional shares to M1 Finance, those are going to be sold as well, and the cash is going to be deposited into your M1 Finance account. Now, M1 Finance actually does offer fractional shares. They just don't allow you to transfer fractional shares from a different brokerage in. And that's pretty standard across the industry. There's really no apps that I know of that you can actually transfer fractional shares into. In most cases, those are automatically going to be sold, and then the proceeds will be moved into your new account. So once you know what stocks you want to transfer and if everything is going to be supported, then you'll need to go into your Robinhood account and find your account number. From the app, you'll just go to the accounts tab and then click on investing. And then right at the top of your phone, you'll see your account number. With that information in hand, you can now go to M1 Finance and open up an account. And there's a link down below for you to sign up super easily. Now, when creating an M1 Finance account, there's a couple things that are really important that you're going to want to keep in mind. First of which is that your information needs to match exactly the information that you gave on Robinhood. So if you gave Robinhood a middle name, make sure you give M1 Finance a middle name. If you didn't, then don't. So make sure that you look at your account information on Robinhood, you make sure it matches exactly to M1 Finance. That's going to make this transfer process so much smoother if that information does match exactly. The other thing you're going to want to keep in mind is your account type. So M1 Finance does offer things like retirement accounts, but as a Robinhood user, you don't have access to those. So when you're transferring from Robinhood to M1 Finance, you have to transfer from one account type to the same account type. So you'll need to open a traditional brokerage account with M1 Finance to facilitate this transfer. Now, after the transfer, if you want to open a retirement account, you can totally do that. But for this transfer, make sure you open a non-retirement account, just a normal brokerage account to facilitate that transfer. So now you've figured out which assets on Robinhood you actually want to transfer. You've got your M1 Finance account set up. The last step is to actually facilitate this transfer, and the process is honestly pretty easy to do. So there is a transfer form that M1 Finance provides that we will link down below in the description for you to check out. I'll put it on the screen right now so you can see it. But you'll basically just want to fill out this form. It's pretty straightforward, but the one thing that you might not notice is that you actually need a recent account statement from Robinhood in order to do this transfer. So make sure that before you close out of Robinhood, you go in there and you go to your documents and you just download a quick PDF of a recent account statement that you can then use to show M1 Finance that you actually own this account and what the account actually holds. Additionally, you'll have to choose on your transfer form if you want to do a full or partial transfer. Now, Robinhood is going to charge you a $75 fee either way. So if you do a full transfer or a partial transfer, Robinhood's going to hit you with a $75 fee for leaving. M1 Finance does not have a fee at all for receiving those assets. Now, if you do a full transfer, that's going to close out your Robinhood account, which might be all right for you if you are not planning on going back to Robinhood, but just keep that in mind. If you do a full transfer, your Robinhood account will be closed as soon as your assets have been fully transferred out. Now, I know transferring from one brokerage to another can be a process that evokes a bit of anxiety for some people, so there are a couple frequently asked questions that I just want to address here because, you might be working with a significant portion of your net worth, so I want to make sure that you fully understand what this process entails and what you're actually doing. So the first thing is talking about minimums. So M1 Finance has a transfer minimum of $1,001. So if your Robinhood account is less than $1,001, you're not going to be able to do a transfer into M1 Finance. And that's honestly probably for the best, because that $75 fee is going to significantly eat into your account balance if you have less than $1,000. Now, if you have less than $1,000, what you could do is you could sell all of your securities in Robinhood, sell all your stocks, your ETFs, etc. Take that cash, put it in your bank account, and then basically take the cash and put the cash into your M1 Finance account. Now, if you did that, you're probably going to have some tax consequences, because when you sell investments for a gain or for a loss, there are tax consequences associated with those actions. So you'll want to keep that in mind if you decide to go down that route. That is also another way to get around the $75 fee, is instead of transferring directly, you could sell your assets and then move the cash into M1 Finance, but that will also incur tax consequences. So make sure to keep those in mind if you do decide to go down that route. A next question that we get a lot is, how often does this process actually take? So in general, you can expect a confirmation email from M1 Finance in about 7 to 10 business days after initiating the transfer. So it takes a little bit of time to actually move these assets from one place to the other, but just keep your eyes peeled on your email about a week after you initiate the transfer, and you should get a confirmation from them. If you don't, feel free to check in with their customer service and just make sure that everything is in order. Also, a lot of people who have crypto on Robinhood are wondering what's going to happen to your crypto. Well, your Robinhood crypto account and your Robinhood financial account are two separate accounts. So you can transfer all of your Robinhood financial assets, all your stocks, ETFs, etc., into M1 Finance, and your crypto account can still stay there even if your financial account might be closed. So keep that in mind, that if you have crypto over there, you can keep the crypto and you won't necessarily have to close that account as well. And then it's also important to mention that if you have any automatic deposits set up for Robinhood, you're going to want to cancel those before you start this process, because if you're trying to move from Robinhood to M1 Finance, you don't want money continuing to flow into your Robinhood account every month, so make sure you close those, cancel those before you start this process. That'll just make things a lot easier for you. Now, overall, it's really important that you do think long-term before you decide to make a significant move like transferring your assets from one brokerage to another. I mean, there are fees associated with it, but it's also just kind of an annoying process that you don't want to do any more often than you have to. So make sure that before you proceed with this, you do your due diligence and you really research the options you have available to you. Make sure that M1 Finance is the choice that you want to make. We have a ton of content on both this YouTube channel and our website, investingsimple.com, that help you compare all of your different options between all these different apps, because there's so many apps out there these days that it gets really tough to kind of figure out which app is actually best for you. So make sure to check out our channel and our website if you want more information and really just dig deeper into which app you're actually looking for. Now, additionally, if you do want a full comprehensive guide on transferring from Robinhood over to M1 Finance, we do have that as well on our website, investingsimple.com. The easiest way to find that is to head on over to Google and search for transfer from Robinhood to M1 Finance, and then click on the link for investingsimple.com. We'll see you over there.